Now, without further ado, fasten your seatbelt and let's take a flight, shall we? So here we are at Kennedy Airport. That is the runway we're going to fly off of. And that is the Cessna 172 Skyhawk that we're going to fly. Let's actually start taxiing on the runway, and there are some different shots of the plane. So we're going to take off from this airport, and we're going to fly over to Manhattan and New York City. Here's a view of the cockpit, and those are the controls in the aircraft. And you can even see New York way in the background there. Okay, so now we're taking off. And that's it, we're up in the air. And we're flying towards Manhattan, which you can see in the distance. So for those of you who have been to New York, you can see that it is very authentic looking. New York, as you can see, has skyscrapers uptown and midtown, as well as downtown, all the way downtown. And in the middle between the uptown and downtown is sort of lower buildings, and that is because there's no bedrock in the middle. There's a bridge there. I believe that is Williamsburg Bridge. Yes, that's Williamsburg Bridge. It connects Manhattan to Williamsburg Brooklyn. That's Brooklyn. That's the East River that you're looking at. On the right is Williamsburg Brooklyn. Now there's the UN. You can see the UN there on the sort of left part of the screen. The United Nations. It's right there on the river. And there's sort of, you can see the Citibank Building. There's Roosevelt Island right in the middle of the East River, where people live. And then now we can see we're flying over Midtown and heading up towards the Upper East Side. There's another view of the UN, which is very cool. That really does look like it, believe me, because I am from New York. I am a New York native, born in Manhattan and raised there. There's the Citibank Building. So that is the Upper East Side we're looking at. We're looking at a view of the Upper East Side, and we're going to be flying, and be turning our aircraft to fly across Manhattan and across Central Park. As mentioned before, we are going to be changing the weather and the time later, so you can see what it looks like at different times. There's a view of, that's a nice view of the Upper West Side. This is called the Upper West Side, and basically, and this is the Hudson River. Now we're looking down the whole Hudson River. By the way, this river is where that flight where Captain Sullenberger, or whatever his name was, landed his plane after getting hit by a bird strike. It was right here, but we won't be landing in the Hudson River because there are no birds out today. Here we go. Here's downtown. Here's all the way down the financial district. This is sort of the home traditionally of like the stock market, Wall Street, and many financial firms. Although that's changing because the world's changing really. So what's happening now is that that's becoming a very residential district, and it's known as the FIDI neighborhood, standing for financial district. So many people are moving there to live there actually, or at least they were. So now we're coming around and we're to the southern tip of Manhattan, and you can see that really looks amazing, amazingly realistic. It's a great way to learn about, if you're ever going to visit someplace, go for a flight around it and you can get sort of a feeling of what the lay of the land is. That is the Brooklyn Bridge that you see, the world famous Brooklyn Bridge, one of the wonders of New York and one of the oldest things in New York. We're going to fly now. I can see the Freedom Tower, although somebody told me not to call it the Freedom Tower, but that's where the World Trade Center was. Well, actually it's out of the screen now, but there's the Woolworth Building just coming out of the screen, one of the oldest skyscrapers in New York. But yes, this neighborhood was where the World Trade Centers stood before they fell down. And now we're coming across. We've just went across New York City again, back to the Hudson River. Now, what we're seeing in the outside of the front window is New Jersey. That's Jersey City, because the Hudson River, on the other side of the Hudson River, is New Jersey. That's where New York State ends. So, and New Jersey City has sort of built their own little skyline there as well. There she is, Lady Liberty. It's nice to fly by at night too.
New York approach Cessna Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra is type Cessna Skyhawk 6 miles east of Newark. Request flight 5.
It kind of made it a little bit darker so you can see the lights in and around New York turn on. So that's very interesting to see. And you can see, for example, the bridges, and right around dusk, as the day ends and night begins to crawl out of the big city. Sort of a film noir type of look in the great metropolis. And here we go into sort of like downtown New York again with this type of look. Very, very cool and realistic. It's very soothing, I think, to just fly around. Looking right as the sun sets, because the sun sets in the west, and you're looking west right there into New Jersey.
Going to 132.8 Cessna X-Ray Golf Sierra. New York approach Cessna.
Yeah, it's really nice to just fly around. That's the nice thing about Flight Simulator. You know, there's no pressure. You don't have to worry about killing anybody or getting killed. You know, you're just there to like take control of your aircraft. That's a nice shot. So Flight Simulator looks best when you're sort of at distances you're really supposed to fly, but it really is holding up pretty darn well right now, especially at this time of day. I mean, that looks real. You know, that really looks real. Close or not, that looks real. It looks like you're really flying low over Manhattan. Now, obviously, you can't fly that low over Manhattan because you'll get shot down or something. You know, they're going to think you're some sort of a crazy person. That is a great shot. The atmosphere is what's really, the haze and everything is what really helps to really make it feel like a real thing. That's the FDR Drive. It's a highway on the east side of Manhattan. And that is, I know exactly where that is. And that looks exactly what it's supposed to look like. That really looks like that little part of the FDR Drive. I mean, it's so familiar. Actually, all of it. And those chimney stacks over there is for the 14th Street. Look at also the traffic. That's actually why we flew here. We wanted to take a look at the traffic. And look at all that traffic there. That really, I mean, if you were to quickly glance at this, you know, you would think that this was really shot from a video camera at certain points, you know, not everywhere, but I mean, especially if you compare it to previous versions of Flight Simulator, even FSX, you know, and certainly going back before that. I mean, the realism in Flight Simulator 2020 is just off the charts. I mean, look at that. Look at that. That looks real to me. It looks real. I mean, if you stared at it if you were to show this to somebody, and that wasn't, you know, into this kind of stuff, or, you know, they would just say, oh, okay, where'd you shoot that? You went up in an airplane or something? There's an iconic building in New York, the Chrysler Building, right on 42nd Street. And what is it, Lexington Avenue? And there's the Citibank Building with that sloped roof. I don't know if it's called the Citibank Building. Oh, that's an also iconic building. All these buildings, just so you know, they're just not filler. They're just not like random thing to look like a big city. These are real buildings, real skyscrapers in New York. If you're from New York, you'll recognize them. If you're not from New York, take my word for it. So we're flying back, and I think we're going to be heading back to the airport at this time. We're coming in for the final approach and the final landing. And here we go. As we were saying before, you do need to have some skills in order to land an airplane, how to approach it, the right way to touch it down and everything. It does take practice. It's not something you can just pick up and do. There's a lot of studying and knowledge that goes on behind it, making sure you don't crash or you don't hit the runway too hard. And there's the runway just sort of coming up behind us, under us. And there we go. Now, if you practice long enough, you might want to try to land a huge 747 or jet or jumbo airliner. And there we go. Here we go. Here's a touchdown, and boom, we're on the ground. We've just gone for like a nice flight around Manhattan. Anyway, thanks for flying with us today. Like I said, we hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. Bye.